thank you so much, like I said, for taking time. I know you guys are busy. And
Yeah, pleasure, no problem.
so, so I wanted to kind of ask and see if I could get you to articulate a little bit. When we first started working with Pacha, it was the Raise the Bar campaign. And I want to make sure that's still what it's called.
Yeah, totally. So raise the bar is kind of, it's sort of elevated to the level of sort of an internal catch-all phrase about what we do as a company.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, obviously there's the pun of making soap bars. And we do love a good pun, but really it's just about the constant improvement and growth as a company. And so it's like, we believe that we can raise the bar with our products, that we can raise the bar with our people, the way that we manufacture everything, the way that we engage with our charitable partners, the way that we source our ingredients. So it's kind of like a mantra for the organization that we can constantly work with. So I think previously it has been a campaign, but now it's sort of kind of stuck. It is what we do. We raise the bar.
Right. I that, and we love that. Our registration in Kenya is the word is Kuendeleza, is the name of Foothold in Kenya, and that means advance, to always be advancing forward. So it's so interesting how much so many of the themes we find with Pacha, and I just think that's such you guys have really hit a great pun, and it sounds like it just encompasses everything, like you said, like it just, so I'm glad you're not getting rid of it, because I really thought it was I know you've changed your logo over the last few years, and I'm like, it is so
one of those, those
clever.
like long internal, we were doing this whole thing around, okay, how do we sum up our values, how do we know, that kind of re-articulation exercise, one of those things that takes amazing amounts of time to kind of wordsmith.
Yes.
In the end, we came all the way back for a second. We're like, raise the bar really sums it up. So like, let's just stick with it.
I know, and it's so great. Bar soap, raise the bar. It is. I'm glad it's not going out of style. I am always, I'm a sucker for like a really clever pun. So that one.
Yeah, I feel it goes like, for me, it's part of like being a father. You get to do dad jokes. It's one of the best parts of being a dad. So anything pun based is good by me.
Yes, perfect. I was an English teacher for 12 years, so some puns are are annoying, but a really good one, a clever one, really. I really cherished. One of the things when we first got in contact with Andrew and the beginning of all of this was that we kind of just happened upon Pacha accidentally. And then we started having these conversations, and we were so excited to meet an organization that wanted to invest, its outreach and the sustainability and empowering people. And all of the things we read and all the videos that are on Pacha's website, that was something that we really were drawn to, because that's our organization. And so a lot of times the work that we found that was going on was charitable, which was great, but it wasn't really sustainable. And so so that was what we were really excited. And I went to Burundi and 2016, and we saw that with Imagine Burundi there, how it was the same models, the same themes. It was just so wonderful, working and partnering and collaborating with people who really want to see people not just, it's not like about pulling yourself up for your bootstraps. It's about giving people the tools and the resources and working with them to help them advance, right? To raise the bar and and wherever they are, taking it a step further. So I wondered if you want to talk a little bit about kind of that strategy for the organizations you work with and Pacha's values.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're absolutely right. The focus for us is around that sustainability. I think that, like you said, I think we've seen lots of projects that can be well-meaning, but ultimately, they last as long as the funding is there, and then they can finish. And so ultimately, at Pacha, the things that we're looking for. So firstly, it's WASH programming, so water, sanitation, and hygiene, and that is it's just a very clear link to the product that we produce, and also it's a huge need in the world, and the numbers are staggering when you look at the number of, particularly children dying of diarrheal disease. And these are things that we know how to deal with. It's just that we're still working as a global society to pull together the resources and the equity of the resources in order to be able to manage these issues. So that's our kind of focus in terms of our programmatic area, but we want to make sure that the work that we do is sustainable independently in the long run.
Right.
One of Andrew, our founders, Andrew and Abby, our founders, one of his kind of sort of favorite phrases is that his belief in like business can free people. We see business can be a tool that's used to extract and monopolize and in the worst cases kind of enslave and entrap. But we don't think that is inherent to the nature of business. I think it's a tool, and it can be used for multiple purposes. And we really think that the opportunity is there if you can embed the impact that you're trying to achieve in a way that is net beneficial for obviously the beneficiaries who are receiving soap, but producing it in a way that actually creates value in communities. Right. We're not just like making soap in China and then dumping it into markets in across the world. We are wanting soap can be made everywhere. Soap is one of the oldest products ever made, and we make very in Pacha in Hastings we make very simple soap. It is vegetable oils and lye and scent and color, and that's it. Yeah. It's a natural basic product, and that can be made anywhere, and then there are different vegetable oils everywhere around the world. And so we were inspired by the ability to have an impact in the world of hygiene, but do it in a way that is sustainable and locally run and locally driven and creates jobs and livelihoods. So livelihoods are really kind of the second thing that we look at. It's wash kind of first, and then livelihoods is our number 2 priority. And particularly, we found that in lots of places it's mostly women's cooperatives that we work with to make soap. Which again, the data is very clear on that, as if supporting women has a net larger effect in communities in terms of the distribution of wealth. And so if we can create soap locally and kind of basically use Pacha's purchasing power to buy soap from women's cooperatives that we work with local groups like yourselves to help found, and then provide like a line of income, it gets a business going. And we see that on our own thing. The way that Pacha started, what you need to kick a business off often is just one really good customer to get you going. And so we want to be that first good customer for women's groups around the world that then allow them to make soap, sell soap, which we then donate into local schools to drive hand washing and sanitation programming. And then, the goal is that those groups will be independently sustainable in the long run by producing local soap.
And it really works. I mean, what you said about working with women, we tried in the beginning. We were concerned if we worked just with women, there's this real, there's a lot of domestic violence, and we were very concerned if we neglected the men that we would have a problem, and actually when we failed so miserably with groups that were both mixed with men and women, there was, it like you said, the research shows that it's just the resources you expend. There was a lot of competition. It was really dysfunctional. And when we started working with women, they just flew and they took off. And then we found the men came in and said, hey, I want to do what they're doing. So then we were able to reach the men through the women, and we didn't expect that dynamic, of course. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, our experience confirms all that research. Every community is different though. And so we work very locally. And so the work we do is very holistic. But we don't, we work primarily in one rural community, and we inch very slowly out of that community. So we work in several communities, but they're all pretty close in locale, so we can be efficient and being culturally responsive and logistics and so forth. That's our model. And soap has been such a huge component of that wash. So we started off with, the biosand filters, and then recognize what good is it to have clean water if they can't wash things. They've got clean water, but their hands are dirty and they're spreading diseases that way, and they're not able to wash their dishes and so forth. And then we found hand washing stations all over the place, beautiful hand washing stations, and no soap over and over again. So we've definitely been that very model. We've worked within that, and it's been really beautiful to see how it duplicates in different cultures. And so
I think it's worth saying that. So although we really like the model where women's cooperatives, or not necessarily only women's cooperatives, but that we work with to produce local soap, we have that model in different forms in different parts of the world, notably in Burundi, which you were talking about. But one of the things that we're very conscious of, and just to highlight a point which we think is really important, is that we're not trying to do kind of top down, saying, right, well, this is the model here, right, go take this and put this in Kenya. It's so important, exactly like you say, it's about having a a high quality local actor who's really embedded in the community and say, look, hey, look, this is the concept. These are the sorts of things we like to support, but we're not going to say it has to look this way or this way, because there could be loads of really important reasons why it has to be completely different in one area versus another. And I think that's for us why our partners are so important, is that we want to support innovative programs. We want to support WASH funding, we want to support livelihoods, and we want to use our funding in a creative way. So one of our other partners works in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and we're really proud to work in areas like that, which are in extreme stressed areas through war and conflict and Ebola and then COVID, you know. So we try to use our funding creatively, but we're also very conscious that we don't want to dictate what that looks like, exactly how it's structured, and which is why we have to work with great local partners who are have the ability to understand what can make this actually work on the ground.
That's a really important point. I think that, there's this balance between, having quality control and tracking the data and, evaluating and controlling, and saying this one size fits all, this cookie cutter approach. We've just seen it fail over and again. A lot of money and resources wasted when, we use the acronym CASH: complementary, accessible, sustainable, and holistic. And so if it doesn't complement the culture, if it doesn't complement even the structure of the community, the government, the rules, if it doesn't fit, it's not going anywhere. And so that's our first thing, is to make sure we appreciate that like kind of that structure, but also that flexibility too. That definitely has made a huge difference. And then it gives those people on the ground the ability to be creative and innovative. Right. Too. So, our groups are now, they've been so creative through COVID. They've been delivering instead of delivering the soap to school, they're going into the community and delivering it to homes, checking in, but now they're also investing in, they're buying, they're looking into buying some poultry and kind of diversifying some of their funding right now, because, so they're always kind of reevaluating themselves. I mean, women are so good at that in these environments.
And that's a great example of why livelihoods is so important, right? Because I think why we tie WASH with livelihoods is that because, and we've seen, there's actually a great example on our site of a lady called Sophie, and she's in Burundi, and she's looking at using the revenue from the soap manufacture to build out her farming enterprise. And that's why I think you want to put the opportunity into the hands of people who know how to use it the best, right? And that's the people in the villages and in their own communities who want to decide their actions of their own lives. And that's why we come back to something like business can free people. It's like, okay, gives people the flexibility to make their own choices and to choose how they want to live their lives and to choose how they want to use the funds that they create. And if those funds that they create, are that they're generating them in a way that is positive, and that then the money that they take is then used in a way that is positive, then that's great. And that's kind of, again, the way we try and see things within Pacha. Like we try to create an environmentally friendly, natural, safe product that people can use and enjoy. And then, we donate from the profits. We make sure our supply chains are, sustainable, and we actively target to source our ingredients from places where we can maximize livelihood impact in our supply chain. And then for every bar that we make and every bar that we sell, you're getting a net positive. Then that's exactly what we're trying to see with our partners with soap production all around the world. And I think the things that we've seen is that the strongest advocacy and change, it comes from within, right? It comes from people within communities deciding that they want to do things differently. And again, that's where putting resources into people's hands can be really powerful. I think that the local people always know the best solutions, and they're always the best able to implement them, and they're always the best able to make sure that those changes are sustainable. So we very much look for partners who work in that way. We look for partners who are embedded with local communities, who are not being judgmental of where people are at. It's like, okay, this is a situation. They're looking at it with, trying just to enable local change, and trying to kind of not necessarily come at it with a with a viewpoint, because we obviously all of our viewpoints are colored by our own experiences, which is why we never want to do any of the execution on this. Our job is to understand what we're trying to achieve in the world, meet partners who we think can help do that, and then ask for the feedback and the results. And I think another part of what is really important to us is that, if you don't measure it, if you're not asking for the feedback, then you're actually potentially being very irresponsible, because
right.
we've seen this too, that there are plenty of instances of failed projects, and actually there are plenty of instances of like projects going the other way and actually creating net negatives. And it's it's the road to hell being paved with good intentions.
Exactly.
Right? Lack of cultural understanding, it's lack of it's imposition of values and morals from one society which controls the power to another. And I think those kind of power dynamics can be very, very problematic. And a lot of the critique of the aid sector with kind of a post-colonial narrative of control of local groups. And I think what we're looking to try and support is just say, hey, look, soap. Everybody needs soap. Like you were saying before, everyone needs clean hands. It is just a net benefit to everyone. There is no cultural judgment on that. And what we're trying to create is the opportunity for everyone to have that in a way that is sustainable in the long run, locally driven and managed, and long-term successful.
Mm-hmm. That's so important. We've had so many discussions about like the new imperialism, where a lot of mission type work or charitable work becomes that unintended consequence, that it becomes controlling, or it becomes really oppressive. It leaves behind a wake that was never intended. So our unintended consequences are something we're always evaluating. Sometimes those are positive unintended consequences, but I think that follow-up is what has been, that painfully, sometimes it's really painful doing the work of follow-up. But our partners on the ground always say, if you don't follow up, it was nothing. If you don't follow up, you never cared about this project to begin with. Like, that's kind of how they discern who comes in and who, stays, and what projects thrive are the partners who follow up. And because follow-up can break your heart. I mean, you can go in and see a failed project, or you see someone has, left town, or, but the follow-up and the continuous, like, working in that same direction, in a humble way. I think that cultural humility is, really what you're talking about. And I think that is such a key, that's a constant work of maintaining and being aware of that power differential that we have, whether it's being foreigners or the color of our skin or whatever it is. And so we have to be really, there's one project we never visit for that reason. We always visit off-site, because the moment we step into it, the dynamic changes and expectations change. And so
I think that's where, like, integrity and being with it. I mean, I think that, again, understanding where failures happen is really important, and just being honest about them. Like, we see that within our work as a business, but also in the work of what we support. We don't expect everything to go right, but we expect to know whether it's successful or not, and why. And one of the things that we look to do is to form long-term partnerships with the organizations that we support, in the expectation that things aren't going to go right necessarily all of the time. But as long as there is, as you say, integrity and humility and honest measurement of what's going on, and then, we will happily support and work out how to iteratively improve and change things. Because I think that being a part of that, sort of being that kind of funder, is really important to us. It's innovation is really important to us. Long-term partnerships are really important to us, and being hands-on. I mean, because the other thing that we could, it would be, and no necessary criticism of anyone who does it this way, but there are plenty of ways you can just donate into a larger group, or into another group which manages funds, which then kind of takes that burden off the organization. I mean, like, a large part of my role, obviously, Pacha has to fund my role to, part of my role is doing this. It is because we want to be hands-on. We want to know exactly where our money is going, and what we want to have that hands-on approach. It's because it's kind of in the nature of what we are. We have that entrepreneurial, like, we're hands-on making company. We make all of our bar soap ourselves in Hastings. and we talk about our crafters, and we feel that that energy needs to go through our entire organization. We want to know and be in touch with and have relationships with all of the people that we support, and that takes effort, and we have to follow up, right? And so that's kind of part of the way that we approach this, is that we want to be hands-on, and not hands-on in terms of doing it, but hands-on in terms of really understanding what's going on, setting a high bar, and asking the right questions about the work that we're funding.
That's awesome. I mean, that's something that just makes me so happy to hear, because, you know, there's people who, you know, I remember Andrew, we got to come to Hastings last spring, and he gave us a tour, and he said, you know, there's easier money out there. And I said, yeah, but it's such a value to us having a partner that we have these compatible values, and that you care about us, and that we have this long-term connection, and that you're such a part of our story. And so it's not about the money so much as it is about that, right? That you care. I mean, it just encourages us so much when our donors and supporters and customers want to hear the stories, want to stay engaged. And we want donors to increase their expectations of organizations like ours. You know, like you said, ask the right questions, lean in, and I know we all live busy lives, but so it's just, I always appreciate this kind of time, because you know, life is fast paced, and you know, for some people it's really easy just to, you know, write a check, but you know, for me, taking time like this is just so encouraging, so valuable, and I just think you can't measure this kind of interaction, and you know, so I'm just really encouraged to hear you say that, and you know, that's, once again, it's those are the things that are hard to measure, but you know, you find ways to measure them. And I, you know, as we've been really going deeper and tracking and doing some data analysis, we find that there's often things that we didn't know how to ask until we start looking and reevaluating the numbers. You start to, you know, and it's been real exciting to see, as we have paused during COVID, it's kind of given us a chance to do that, and to really dig into our means of tracking our outcomes and people affected, and looking at the success, and where are we directing our resources. And so, you know, that's the technical part of it. But yeah, these kind of conversations where you get to hear the heart of an organization and their mission, and so thank you for that. That was just really
No, thank you. You know, I mean, this is likewise. It's great to be able to have the time to future, and I think there's real potential in that, because I think
is.
Like, I'm passionate about Pacha. I joined Pacha because Andrew and I really hit it off from a values perspective about the charitable stuff. I worked in nonprofits for like 12, 13 years, and worked particularly in West Africa. And I used to run, so I used to be on your side of it. I used to run nonprofits. And then I got more into supply chain work in terms of social business. And Andrew and I really hit it off with our kind of shared beliefs around kind of what makes good impact in donations and what makes good impact in supply chain. And we're kind of constantly looking about how we can, you know, improve and work on that. And I think that ultimately, I really love Pacha because of the values, but then the product's great too. And I think that for us, it's really interesting to think about how we can get that message out, because we struggle with that, to be honest. It's hard, you know, it's not often you get the chance to sit down and have a half-hour conversation about what you're passionate about, right? And I think when you do, it's like, oh, well, this is different. But if you're walking around a supermarket and you see a bar of soap and it's next to another bar of soap, you're like, well, I like the colors on this one, I like the smell of this one, and that's what drives purchasing.
Right.
And I think a lot of what drives us at Pacha is there's, you know, we talk about like the layers of the onion, right? You peel it down. We like to think there's lots of layers and there's lots of passion that goes right the way through the organization. But we have to work really hard on communicating that. And I think one of the best ways to communicate it is like people like yourself who can be like, well, look, this is a great product because of all these other things that are going on. Right. And that really helps get the message out. So I think
absolutely. But, you know, letting people like connect a story to the product, because I think Pacha has an amazing story, and there's so many stories. Just amazing how the aroma is such a marketing.
Yeah, well, we call that the Pacha smell. I mean, I love the individual aromas, and there is a blended aroma of everything together. Andrew has an amazing story. This is a massive aside. Andrew has an amazing story about that. He once got he got given, or he bought 2 really large frozen hams, And so he kept them in the pack. We have these big, we have two big factories now. And he kept it upstairs. We had a freezer upstairs. Like, oh, you didn't have space for a home. So he's like, oh, I'll put it in the freezer upstairs. And he came back to it 3 months later, goes home, cooks it, and he sat with Abby and eating it. And he's like, something's wrong with his ham. And then he realized that it tastes of Pacha. And the smell is so strong in the factory that it went through the freezer into a vacuum sealed bag. And it's a powerful thing. And we use all natural scents. One of the things that we're very proud of. We know there's no synthetic scents in our portfolio at all, because Andrew is such a scent freak that he can't deal with it. It's like we had a team offsite the other day, and we went into the place we were renting, and they had the kind of Airwick things.
Oh no!
And Andrew's hunting them down, to pull them out of the wall because he can't deal with it. They're doing great things in Burundi.
Yeah, they really
are. And then the group in DRC are doing amazing things, and we're doing more work with our team in Peru at the moment, which is exciting. And we're starting to source. We're working with our partners in Peru to source rosewood from the Amazon. So rosewood is banned for export from the Amazon because it was selectively harvested. And the group that we're supporting, they have an agro tree planting project, which they've built over 15, 20 years. And it's an incredible place.
Wow.
And they've gone into the rainforest and pulled out the seeds of rosewood in order to be able to make seedlings from them. So they've got the first CITES permit, which is basically a permit to export otherwise endangered goods. So the Peruvian government for the first time have said, hey, look, this is sustainable rosewood essential oil. And so we'll be bringing that out at the beginning of next year, which is
it's incredible. I know it. And Gilbert, I've been talking with him about the distilling of lemongrass in Burundi. So in Kenya, we don't have any access to fragrances and essential oils. And so we've been trying to work with him to see if we could ship some of that over to our sites, because they're just hungry for to smell good. It is kind of a big piece.
And that's the thing, scent is a universal experience, right? We all smell things, and there are different preferences within it, but I think that a nice smelling lemongrass soap bar is great.
Yeah.
And actually, we should talk about that, because in Gilbert, there's a certain still that they're using for that.
Yeah.
Which is developed by someone else that we're working with, who's a very, very talented engineer. So it's possible to create essential oils locally very cheaply.
And there's all kinds of, lemongrass grows wild in Kenya the way it grows in Burundi.
You can tell people things, you can show people videos, but there's nothing quite like an in-person interaction, or even if you can't in person, Zoom is good too. But yeah, no, I agree. I think there's lots of opportunity.
I sell more Pacha soap than I ever expected to. And I think that's really that piece, that human piece. People know me, they know our organization locally, and they want to be a part of what we're doing. And also the soap smells amazing. So it's the thing, the aroma of it is better than any business card that you can give, or brochure, So it's such a sweet, intimate gift too, that's not expensive. And it's just it's really been amazing. The journey with soap, and I think it's just the smell of happiness and and joy and love and all those things. What are some new directions that Pacha's looking at with I know a lot of projects have been out this year, a lot of new lines. And so what are some other, is there anything else that Pacha is looking to in the near future to expand on?
So we were launching in 7 new categories this year. Some of those got pushed back just because obviously COVID has been for everybody. And we had launched a campaign called We Got This during COVID. We were donating a bar soap for every bar soap that was bought online. We were donating to communities in need. And we started making hand sanitizer, which was actually at the request of our local hospital in Hastings, in Nebraska. They couldn't get access to it. And obviously in Nebraska, you're in the middle of the Corn Belt, and there's a lot of ethanol being made. Like, this is crazy. Why can't we be making hand sanitizer? So we actually ended up working with Governor Ricketts of Nebraska to get some of the regulations changed so that we could start making hand sanitizer. And that's been great. And actually we've got hand sanitizer in places like Costco now, which has been great. But then obviously we're expanding different categories, things like deodorants. And
so the hand sanitizer, just want to ask you, I haven't tried it yet. Does it smell better? I mean, it smells good, right?
I'll say, yeah, send me your address now. I'll send me some. It's, yeah, so
Okay, great.
we put French lavender into it.
Okay.
But yeah, but so
Because there's some
I could,
nasty smelling hand sanitizer around here. It's
I could talk to you a long time about why that is. It's all the
yeah.
regulations about what kind of alcohol's been going into hand sanitizer.
Hmm.
But our stuff is being produced with USP quality hand sanitizer. So it's sure it has an ethanol smell, but it doesn't have any of that. It doesn't smell like tequila, which some
Yeah,
of
really bad tequila is what it.
yeah, cheap tequila, or in some cases it can actually smell actively very bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could dive into that, but I won't. I won't bore you with it.
I assumed because anything you put out there smells wonderful. I knew there was this emergency period where maybe it didn't, but I just wanted to clarify that. So yeah, I'd love to sample some of that, and I'm.
Yeah, sure, I'll send you some. And yes, so there's a categories we're expanding to, which is great. We're sort of excited with those, like deodorants and things
Oh
like that.
wow.
It's fun. Um, and then we're launching a new brand next year called Soli, which again was supposed to be this year, but we pushed it a little bit, which is in the essential oils. So the things I was talking about with rosewood, we actually have lemongrass coming from Zambia. We're sourcing kind of from all over the world, so direct sourcing for impact in environmental sustainability and sustainable communities. So kind of because we're so passionate about essential oils, we're kind of and all of our scents are derived from essential oils or are just straight essential oils. We were kind of passionate about that. So that's being launched next year, which is great. And the other big thing we're working on we're always working on our supply chain. So we're going to be working on sourcing some of our base oils that go into our soap directly from projects in Ghana and Liberia. So smallholder farmers in West Africa and so direct sourcing. So we source at the moment from fantastic projects in Latin America, and we're just adding to that and adding sourcing in West Africa as well. And we're looking at hopefully we'll be announcing some great partnerships with that in terms of moving that forward in the next kind of couple of months.
That's exciting. I think it's the kind of, I know it's different, but similar. Our foothold market concept was about we have all these local artisans who make incredible handcrafted items, jewelry, and so forth, and they do it. It's just part of their culture. They do it and they don't make any money off of it. And so here in the US, there's such a, people will pay a higher market value for earrings that are handmade or a basket that's hand woven. They're selling this basket that's like a laundry size basket that's hand woven, that's beautiful for $1. I mean, they really deserve more than that for the work they're putting in. So that's kind of the concept we've had of taking these items and then giving them exposure to a higher end market that appreciates them, and so I love what you're doing with that, and I know we could probably talk about palm oil too, about the sustainable, use of palm oil and how it's not all, I know that you use it. And of course in Burundi, I saw like the responsible use of sustainable use of, palm and harvesting of that. And so I'm glad to see that you're doing that. And I know that that's just another exciting way, giving people access to markets that they wouldn't have. And then it becomes the sustainability piece, right? Because it benefits everyone involved. But it takes a lot of work on the front end to get it to get it started.
And it's all about intention, and this is kind of the raise the bar piece for us. And interesting, you mentioned palm oil. It says yes, we do use palm oil, and I think that there's a lot of challenge around that because the dominant narrative, and it is the correct dominant narrative, is about destruction of rainforests and peat bogs in Southeast Asia and huge environmental devastation based on palm oil. But it's not the plant's fault. It's the way it's being planted and managed. And it is actually the most productive vegetable oil on the planet by a factor of about 6-7 times. So as we're growing, as a population of the globe, effective sustainable agriculture is going to be critical to us. And there's no question in my mind that palm is a part of that. So we're a part of a group called Palm Done Right, about looking at how palm can be grown for good and it can be grown well. And also if you go the history of things like palm, it's similar to something like cocoa. So cocoa is from Latin America, was brought to West Africa and was monocropped for industrial scale because you don't have all the pests from the natural environment. And now 90% of the world's cocoa comes from West Africa. Well, palm came from West Africa, was transplanted to Southeast Asia, and there's been monocrop there. So actually what we're looking at is how we source our palm oil from Latin America, from smallholder dominant groups, and working with organic plantations. So again, these are RSPO IP, so the highest level of the round table of sustainable palm oil in terms of completely traceable. And then they're supporting local farmers as well. But then also, moreover, we're still looking at how we can improve that, and looking at maybe can we source some of our oils from West Africa, where it's native. And again, you're working with much smaller scale smallholder farmers, and driving up the value of supply chains. Because that, as you say, the thing that you see with like baskets and with bracelets is the same thing you can see with agriculture, right? We can, it is more convenient just to buy bulk palm oil from Southeast Asia. We won't do that. Don't do that. But we're saying, okay, how can we keep driving the improvement of that, and source from areas that really drive large scale economic and social change. So that's the sort of stuff that, and the sort of stuff that we like to work on, and why this is for us is raising the bar. It's like a constant improvement. So like, great, okay, we only source organic palm oil from Latin America. Great, that's excellent. But where else can we keep improving with that, because it's one of our biggest ingredients. So the dominant narrative on palm oil, I think, is really important. I think people need to be really aware of palm oil. But the idea that then to say, okay, well, we'll just ban palm oil, it's completely nonsensical. In terms of, one, from a global supply chain perspective, if you ban it in the USA, it's all going to go to India and China, and so you're not going to have environmental change anyway. What we need to be doing is using our purchasing power and the power of our brands to be able to say, okay, how do we drive the change in the supply chain that we want to see? And so that's one of the things that's another piece of the work that I work on within Pacha, is about our sustainable supply chains and partnerships for growth in those areas.
Well, not to use a bad pun, but like, you're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Like the whole, I think a lot of companies have made that decision just to be palm free. I know a lot of soap makers will say, I'm just palm free, but I really find that when I meet with people and they ask me, do you use palm? And I start having this conversation about sustainability and the work we've witnessed in Africa, and then okay. It's really easy to educate people on that.
Totally, and then actually the University of Kent just came out recently. This is a palm is not the other. People are supplanting palm. They're normally using coconut, and actually the University of Kent came out recently and saying, well, actually there's been a huge explosion in coconut planting and growth. And some of most coconut is grown in incredibly biodiverse areas, and there's a whole thing about actually is badly planted coconut is as bad, if not worse, than badly planted palm and managed palm. So it's not like you can just, we like the simple solution. Like we like to say, oh, great, well, I don't use palm, I use coconut, so I'm fine. Like, well, not really. No, it doesn't work that way. Life's not that simple, unfortunately. So it's really about, and again, this is kind of where our attitude about, like, we're crafters. We like to have our hands into something. We like to really understand our supply chains. We like to be a part of these debates and say, look, no, we're actively pro-palm, because we think that palm needs to be done for good. It is not going anywhere. We have to do it right. And so we want to work on it that way.
Well, I think this is the future, really, right? Like, I think this is the future of business and nonprofits is continuing, and once again, that raise the bar keeps going, right? Like, you just keep going further and you keep going deeper and making, and then these problems will creep up, and then you have to reevaluate and search for new avenues for sourcing. But I think people want to know, I think a lot of consumers also feel like they don't have much choice. And so companies like Pacha that are presenting that, right? You can attest to the chain of where these come from and what you're contributing to. And then on top of it, you're giving proceeds to organizations, nonprofits who are also, so you're using your capital and you're also donating, capital as well to organizations that like ours and others who are in line with your values. And so I think it's just a really exciting, we're a very small nonprofit, so it's just very exciting to be a part of this and to learn, from the projects you're doing. And, just the partnership with Imagine Burundi has been such an incredible, but I think this is really this is what consumers really want more and more of. They want to be more educated and they want to know what their products are supporting. They want to be more careful. And I think through COVID, we're all raising our consciousness about these things. We're not spending as much money. We're not showing off as much material things. And so I think we want to be cautious and careful and be a part of, a better future. And so I'm excited just more excited after this discussion, of course. And I'm just really grateful for the time you took. And is there anything else that you want to share that I haven't asked you about?
No, I think that's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate you making the time. It's great to chat.
You have a great day.
Likewise, you too. Great to
All
chat.
right. Take care.
Bye.